Erev Tov, everyone. Moshe Rabbeinu in Chumash Dvarim, beginning with this week's parsha, reviews all of the major incidents and events that occurred to Klal Yisrael in the desert of Sinai over the 40 years from the time they left Egypt until the time of his impending passing. So Moshe describes for us the story of the spies of the Meraglim. Moshe describes for us in next week's parsha the story of the Egel, of the golden calf. Moshe describes the incident of Maariv. Moshe reviews everything. What is fascinating to note is that all of the descriptions that Moshe describes these events, recalls them, differ to the way they were recorded originally in the Torah. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu himself must be aware of that. He wrote the first 4 books. Now he writes the 5th book. Yet he seems to have a different take on the events that occurred. Different description. So there are a number of basic lessons that we learn from this. We have a halacha regarding witnesses that testify to a murder. Reuven kills Shimon. Levi and Yehuda are witnesses. So the Gemara in Sanhedrin and the Gemara in Makos emphasizes that Levi has to be on from one viewpoint and Yehuda from another viewpoint. If they're standing next to each other, it's only considered 1/8. The Gemara is well aware of the truism that we all know, that no 2 people see the same fact exactly the same. And that in fact, the Gemara says that if their testimony is exactly the same, eidutam mechuvenet, so then we suspect them of being liars. There has to be a difference, because they're each coming from a different perspective. And therefore, the detail that one sees, the other did not see, or saw the detail differently. So that's a rule in Ilchas Eid, in testimony, judges how we should deal with it. But here we're dealing with Moshe in heaven, so to speak. Moshe is not the ordinary human being. And what we had in the first 4 books is the record that heaven gives us. How did heaven perceive it? What did they see happen? So, for instance, this week's Parsha is a stark example of that. In the Chumash Bamidbar, Parsha Shlach, we read, "Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe le'mor." The Rabbanu Shalom spoke to Moshe that he should tell the Jewish people, "Shlach lecho anoshim," send spies. So according to that, whose idea was it? It's Kaviyachol, the idea of heaven. They say, Shlach lecho, send, pick out the 12 people and send them. Rashi immediately modifies that. Rashi says, Shlach lecho. Lecho means it's up to you, Moshe. Ani eineni mitzaveh oscha. I'm not telling you to do anything. I told you, Kitov haaretz mod mod. The land is perfect for you. I told you I'm going to take care of it for you. But if you feel that you have to send spies, then that's your option. So that's Shlach lecho. You're sending, not me. In this week's Parsha, where Moshe recounts the matter, so Moshe gives us a different picture completely. V'atikravun elai kulchem. One day there's a mob outside of his room. Rashi says kulchem, that was Be'ervuvia. It was a demonstration, a mob. Old and young, smart and not so smart. Making a tumult. They made a hafganah. And you said, Nishlacho anoshim lefanenu v'yasur alonu. So we want to send spies. We want to get a report where we're going. So Moshe gives it. Well, they're talking logically. You go to a new country, we don't know anything about it. You have to at least read the travel log. And so Moshe sends the spies. And out of it comes the disaster that we're well aware of. So which is it? Is it that heaven told him, Shlach lecha? And Moshe is the initiator? Or it's Vatikravun elai kulchem? The Jewish people demanded it of him, and many times a leader cannot stand in the way of the will of the people. He's forced to do things against his own better judgment. So what we learn from here is both were correct. Heaven also knows. But heaven says, I didn't tell you to send them. It still was up to you. It was still Shlach lecha. Moshe, who is justifying what happened, Because what happened is on his watch. And then in the entire generation, and so to speak, Moshe seals his own fate because of this. Moshe says, all of you came and you wanted. What was I supposed to do? So you have here a stark example, but one that all the Meforshim deal with. The same incident, two different views. Now, if you have Nevuah Ruach HaKodesh, so then we can know what the view of heaven is on certain things. However, when we don't have Nevuah Ruach HaKodesh present, when we have to rely, so to speak, on our own logic and our own understanding of the matter, so then the facts remain the same, but the perspective is different. How you look at it is different. And therefore, how you will describe it later is also different. In the history of the world, there have been many unfortunate incidents that because they come from different perspectives. Sometimes even wars come from different perspectives. The nation feels threatened, whereas the other nation feels that it's not threatening them. I don't know what's going to happen now with Taiwan, for instance. But it looks like, somebody's got to back off. Because each sees the matter from a completely different perspective. So Chazal say, this idea of al todinus chavercho et shetagia linkomo is a matter of perspective. Before you judge the others, try to see it from the other's perspective. If you're able to do so, then many times you can avoid conflicts. You can avoid problems. But if you only want to see it from your perspective, so then there will always be two different narratives. And sometimes the narratives oppose each other. And when they do, sometimes very sad incidents occur. The Torah is a good example of that. That's the Torah's Chaim that we have. That's why everything in Mishnah Torah is Moshe's perspective. The first 4 books of the Chumash is a different perspective completely. Rabbi Hanani ben Akash Omer Rotzak Baruch Hu V'Tatos Es Yisrael Leficha Here B'Lahem Torah Mitzvot Shenam Adonai Chafei Zman Tzidko Yavdil Torah V'Yadim.